Thanks for being here. I wanted to take a second before we get into the main episode to make a little announcement about the Patreon. This episode and the next episode we do will be available to all tiers for our Patreon. But once we start releasing our main episodes to our main channels, to the public channels, all further Patreon episodes will be available to the second tier and up. So if you join us at the $2 tier and you want to continue to see our bonus content, you can upgrade to $5. Otherwise, you still get access. You still get the early access to our ad-free episodes, but you will not get access to any bonus content, including podcasts, blogs, vlogs, so on and so forth. Thank you again for everybody that's shown us support from throughout all of this stuff, and we hope you guys enjoy this episode. It was a little bit of a long one, and it's serious. There's some laughs in there. We're still figuring stuff out, and we're really excited to grow with you all. Thanks again. Bye. Do you want to start it?
Hello.
Hello. Welcome to the first episode of
Un Poquito
Podcast.
Podcast.
We're still figuring it out, guys. I'm sorry.
Un Poquito Podcast.
There we go. Okay, we're moving on. We've introduced the show. I'm Dominic Angel.
I'm Ryan Reyes.
Hell yeah. Like I said before, please bear with us as we're in our transition phase. This might be a little bit of an awkward episode. One of the reasons why it's on Patreon. We're just testing things out. We're very excited for the show. First, I just want to start off by saying thank you so much to everybody that's shown us a tremendous amount of support in this endeavor. We literally would not be recording this podcast right now. We had different plans, and thanks to everybody that reached out to us, and
Yeah, I would honestly say that a lot of the push for us to do this came from the fans. After everything that happened, which we won't get into, we had started making plans individually, and we wanted to do something together, but at the time it was well, let's focus on getting our shit together first because we just lost this huge thing. And then the fans were well, we'll support you if you do it.
And we were
literally
what?
Someone was start a Patreon. We'll subscribe, and and you guys did. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, again, thank you so much to everybody. It really means the world to us, and we're excited about the things to come. And hopefully we grow from here, and we get to achieve the mission that we have in mind.
Yeah, I also want to say I don't have the itemized list right now, so I can't name specific names, but a lot of the equipment is donated, and thank you for that.
Half of the stuff that we're using right now is from the fans, so I don't know what to say other than thank you a million times, because I just this. It's always hard to believe that people actually
you like us.
Yeah, that you believe in us and that this means something to you, and I'm just very thankful that I was able to connect with so many people. So we have two things that we were going to do today, right? One thing is we're going to answer some Patreon questions. So if
Discord questions. We'll make a sound effect for that later.
So one of the things that we're going to be doing is we're going to be taking questions every single episode. We're going to choose two questions from our patrons. And to submit questions, you have to be part of the VIP Discord, which you get at the $15 level. But we opened it up. Well,
we do have the Discord itself is free and people have access to that. And there are other things eventually we still have to make the poll for it, but we're going to do the Poquito mascot competition. We got a lot of suggestions over the last week, so we're going to do that eventually.
So we're going to take some questions later that are from the Discord. We have a handful of questions, but first, exciting news to kind of keep in line with what our mission for the podcast is Ryan had some things in Latino news to talk about.
Yeah, I wanted the first episode to kind of celebrate a lot of I think that this year specifically has been very big for representation. There are some not controversial, but like things up for debate in regards to certain representation. But a lot of things happened this year. The first thing that happened that I was excited for last year, and I still have to buy the first issue, but it keeps fucking selling out everywhere, is Al Madrigal and his co-producer of his comic book released Primos, which is a Latino sci-fi comic book, and I'm really excited about it. All I know right now is the premise is these brothers that are descended from the original Aztec Empire. Um, they figure out space travel and they leave the planet. And when they come back from their journey, it's hundreds of years later. It's modern time, and they see what's happened to their people and their culture. And one brother gets angry at the planet. And he gets angry at, I'll be honest, white people.
Can you blame him?
And so he decides to take everything he's learned from his travels and uses it against it. He becomes a supervillain, like instantly. He's like, "Fuck you guys."
1 second. Go ahead.
Thank you. And he essentially immediately becomes the antagonist of the series. The other brother doesn't disagree, but he, from what I can tell, from what I did read about the prologues of the comic,
Sounds like you read the whole fucking issue. Let me tell you.
This is all prologue. This is all like how Al Madrigal presented it to everyone when he was currently in the process of making the comic book. So the other brother, instead uses his he has power that comes from his people, and he uses it to create guardians. It's kind of like Latino Power Rangers. And he gives them to, there's these cousins. They don't even know they're cousins until this happens, I think, or they're like distant. They're not familiar. This brings them together. He gives these cousins the abilities that descend from their lineage to Aztec royalty, and they become like superheroes to battle like their uncle. It's really cool. It's called Primos. It's by Al Madrigal, and I forget who else, but I'll make sure to learn next time so I can shout them out too, because they deserve it.
If they were Mexican, it should have been called Puro Pinche Power Rangers.
Power Rancheros. Dude, how dope would the suits be if they were more luchador? Oh my god.
Dude, that would be
Someone
sick.
should do that.
Get on it, Hollywood. You know what's funny is that I didn't really meet him. I can't say that I met him. He is producing Vince Caldera's special.
Right.
And so they were talking about it. And then Luis Lemus, excuse me, works at a comic book shop. And so he was talking to the other guy, to the other producer, about about like the store and whatever. He's like, "Oh, you came in and da da da," and he's like, "Oh, cool, yeah, yeah." And then Al Magico was like, "Have you read Primos yet?" And
That's so funny.
Everybody's like, "Nah, not yet, but I'm excited to. I want to watch it." And then I was like trying so hard because I'm like, this is Vince's moment. This is like Louis, like the Pipe Boys, like
Right.
this is their thing. So I don't want to fucking butt in. I was gonna be like, "We were talking about the," but I had to be like standing there with the camera, like, you know. But it was funny.
I always picture Al Madrigal in his suit, so I'm just imagining him like reaching into the coat pocket and being like, "Well, read it now."
Well, read it now. Read it before you're set.
Talk about it in your show.
It was funny because he kind of just brought it up slyly, but then it was kind of, it gave everybody an out because the guy that was like the other producer or whatever was like, "Yeah, I went in to go buy it one time at this store, and then they were like, 'Oh, we just sold out.'"
Yeah.
And then
I'm like so angry that it's been 6 months since it was released, and I'm like anxious because I couldn't buy it right away, and when I finally could, it was sold out everywhere.
But the producer goes, the clerk tells me, "Oh, it's sold out." And then he's like, "Oh, I guess that's good." And then Al Madrigal was like, "Yeah, that's a good thing." And then he goes, "Yeah, but then he told us that he sold out because the author bought them all." Which is actually a thing. Like people do that.
That's so funny, but that like adds to the bit that I implied earlier of him just handing them to people to make sure they're getting read.
Well, exactly. I mean, that's why he did it. I mean, not to fuck the good thing.
That's
Don't
so
fucking
funny.
tweet at Al Madrigal that I told you guys this story.
Unless he wants to be on the podcast.
No. But it was just funny.
I'm sorry.
It was just funny because that's exactly the reason why he's like. But the thing is because the publishers only give the authors like so many books. Sometimes they don't give them any books, so they literally have to go buy their own to make sure that other people get it. Because I think like between like sometimes they give them like 20 books, right?
Right.
So that's why he did it. He was like, well, I needed to give it to, like I wanted people to read it, so I had to make sure to get them.
One thing I thought was also interesting because I went time with another friend of ours, and but I just realized there's this correlation that I think the thing that's a huge benefit from the recent, not this year, but like the years to come that have been pushing for this. There's been a push. Let me collect my thoughts. For the last like half decade, I feel like there's been a long push for representation, and that's driving a lot of like biracial or what's the terminology? I don't want to say mixed because I'm told
Some people say multiracial.
Multiracial, like half Mexican, half white, half Mexican, half black people. To it gives them a desire to learn more about the other side that they'd kind of been forgetting about. Especially, I feel like with half Mexican, half white guys, because Madrigal's half white, right?
Yeah.
And also, this is a great segue into our other friend who just launched something. That was the third thing I couldn't remember earlier. Is Fred Armisen is help producing This Fool.
Yeah, This Fool on Hulu, August 12th. I'm going to fucking watch it. But there's so many good people working on it, but it was created and produced. It was created by Chris Estrada, produced by Fred Armisen. It's starring Frankie Quinones. It's like Jonathan Rao, previous guest, is a writer on the show. And they're already working on season 2, so I'm really excited. Frankie Quinones, I already said that, but if you don't know who Frankie is, he's the guy behind Cholo Fit Creeper. So that fool and fucking Michael Imperioli is in it.
Dude, it looks hilarious. I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, they said the way that they pitched it was Friday meets the Coen brothers, so that's very exciting.
I can see that for sure.
Yeah, but it's gonna be dope, and I'm hoping we get Chris on, and I'm sure we'll have Jonathan.
Yeah, like Jonathan.
I think Jonathan would come back. Yeah, I think he would want to. But yeah, I'm gonna definitely check that out. One thing I wanted to say about all of this stuff, because there's like big news in the Marvel thing that we'll talk about. Obviously, everybody's talking about it, but I've just been thinking about this stuff a lot, especially for like people our age, that millennials and older, and like you're the elder Gen Z or whatever. But like, there's this huge push for representation, and I don't know, it's interesting because I think as I've started to learn more about it, there's a lot more representation than we realize, especially now.
That was the other thing I wanted to talk about. There's like actors that we didn't realize over the last like decade and a half were Latino the whole time.
Well, it's not just that, because that idea is like Latino, like Marilyn Monroe. I mean, she's white, but she's Latina, and she spoke Spanish and like was born in Mexico, but she had to hide.
Yeah.
Her. That's why. What's her name? Rita. Fuck, I forgot her name.
Is Black Panther?
No. She was the Rita Moreno.
Ocean.
She was in Singing in the Rain, and
Right.
I think it's Rita Moreno, but that was like a big deal of like she didn't like change her last name. But anyway, there's like a bunch of like newer, younger actors, like especially it's mostly geared towards younger people.
Yeah.
But there's like a lot more representation. It's just, I think the thing is that it's not geared towards like people in our age groups. Right. And so I just kind of want to point that out, because like a lot of people talk about how there's not enough representation, and I will obviously say like there's a huge lack of it for sure, but I think there's another there's something going on like below our noses, where it's just like you just got to look for it and you can find it.
Yeah.
You kind of have to change. You just you have to search for it, and there's a lot of it that's already there.
Yeah, that's like one thing that I wish I was able to find their name. I can't remember their name right now. One of my mutuals posted a video where they literally just like talked about all the people you didn't know were Latino in Marvel. And next time we record, I'm gonna make sure I find this person's name because they went to my high school and they're from our hometown, and I really want to shout them out. But one thing I didn't know was one of the actors from Black Panther, which was the next thing I wanted to talk about, is Latina.
Lupita Nyong'o. But we'll
Yeah,
get to her because it ties into this whole the new Black Panther
yeah, we're
announcement.
gonna talk about it in a second.
So we'll talk about Lupita in a second. But go, whoa, just say what the news is.
There was one other thing that I mentioned earlier I wanted to address because I thought it was an important thing to talk about. Was that's why I had to pull it up. How do you say her name again? I'm sorry, the second one from the top.
Oh, Xochitl Gomez.
Sochi Gomez, who made her film debut in Multiverse of Madness, and she played America Chavez. So here's the controversy: it's great. It's a new representation for Latinos in general, but and this is the thing that I forgot about until it was pointed out. The character in the comic books is Afro-Latina. She's half black, half Mexican, and they
Right.
did not acknowledge that. Not only in the choice of actor, but in the story. Both of her moms are Latina as well, and it's great representation. The moms didn't get any lines though, which was weird, and they don't address her being that in any other scene except the beginning when she speaks Spanish, and then like that's it. And I do understand people's frustration because one, it's not super efficient representation. They like kind of introduce that she's Latina and then don't talk about it ever again. But two, they definitely like in a sense whitewash the character. Not in the sense that she herself is white, but they made her more tolerable for a white audience intentionally. And I think that's an important thing to acknowledge.
Yeah, it's so well. This is kind of what I want to get into about like this how complex like Latino representation is
Yeah.
because it, it just goes into like Latinidad is like fucking it's a weird complex identity
Yeah.
because it's multiracial. It's a multiracial identity. Um and because that was the whole thing with Miles Morales. Like there was like a whole thing about how people were upset that they changed his hair in his second appearance or like or in
Well, I thought it was I. The only thing I remember is they updated now that he's older. They updated his Spider-Man suit, but it's very like stereotypical. One, it's stereotypical, but two, it has no reflection of his Latino upbringing. Only that he's like from New York and that he's an African American.
Yeah, I remember that was a issue that I had when was it multiverse? What is it?
Into the
Spider Verse.
Spider
Enter
Verse.
the Spider Verse was released. When I saw it, I was just like, I wish they would have, at the very least, because the thing is like I'm a firm believer in there's not one way to be right.
Yeah.
There's not a correct way to be Latino,
Right.
but it was disappointing that his mom wasn't like more present.
Yeah, like there's this like brief implication that she has this emotional connection to Miles. And I understand that a lot of it because of his relationship with his uncle has to be driven between like it's an immediate foil between his relationship with his dad and his relationship with his uncle. So I understand that, but it's also like his mom could have been more important in the film. Like not even a whole like not to completely rewrite the story, but they could have given her more. She's in like 2 scenes.
Because the thing is that it was clear that she had close ties to like her Puerto Rican upbringing.
Yeah, and like the food she was cooking and how she talked to him. One thing I think was a nod to that, and I do appreciate it, is like when he would, without, like as a reflex, without focusing on it or emphasizing it, without the film put it in there as if it was normal and in a good way, is that he would naturally speak Spanish like 3 different times in the movie.
Yeah, he spoke Spanish a couple times, and like what was this, the scorpion dude or the wrestler dude?
Yeah,
I
he
forgot.
spoke Spanish
lizard
to
guy.
the wrestler, and I think he said something at the beginning of the film. When he
Yeah.
was walking through. There's like 3 different scenes where he speaks Spanish.
Yeah, which is I don't know, it's cool, but it's just like I would have liked to have seen a little bit more of that. But again, it's like I know that there's not one way to be. And there's always this competition that I feel like a lot of Latinos have with black people,
Yeah.
because whenever a black thing comes out, it's like, oh, what about us? Like, what about, like,
Yeah, and I
you
see
know?
that too. And I think it's also a thing for people that are both, specifically Afro Latinos. I'm not speaking from my own experience because I'm not, but I have like old friends that are Afro Latino. This is a thing I've noticed and I think I've heard people say it, and that's the only reason I bring it up, is a lot of it has to do with like the way they're perceived is the way they're treated. And so that's how they identify.
Well, that's okay.
Like that's a component of it, is what I mean.
Okay, so let's get to the actual like meat of what we're talking about, or like the thing that set this off was the Wakanda Forever trailer,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So what can you expand on this? Like, what is it? What's the big deal with?
So, the perceived. So, I'm told that there's going to be two different forms of antagonists. I forget who the biggest one is. I think it's someone said it was Doctor Doom, but I don't know if they were joking. But the central, like, to launch the story forward antagonist is going to be Namor. Not necessarily an antagonist, but he's going to be in the film, and I think that there's going to be some initial conflict between his people, which I think is, I don't remember if they call it Atlantis. I might be just thinking of DC and Aquaman, which forgive me if that's true. I didn't really read Namor, but his people and the Wakandans. Because there are scenes, we watched the trailer right before recording, and there are scenes where they show both people like at arms in front of each other, like at the very least, not hostile, but like defensive towards each other. So I think that's going to be an initial conflict that drives the story, and it's going to be a thing of like becoming friends with the sea people by the end of the film to like fight a common enemy, which is cool.
Was Namor like? I know. Was his character like a brown person in the books?
Not specifically, I don't think. I think this is something that the film is doing. Sorry, this is something the film is perpetuating on its own. I don't think this is necessarily something that was decided in the comics, but I also haven't read the Namor comics too much, and especially not recent comics, so I don't know if that's also something that's changed. But I think it's something that the movie did in purpose to like present Latino representation, which I am not necessarily against. Well, you say your thing first.
I'm okay. You say your thing first, because it's gonna.
Well, I think there's two sides to this thing. One of them is based on how they handled the first Black Panther movie. I have no doubt that they are trying to be accurate in certain representations. Like they're using what looks like, but I could be wrong, Mexica, which I believe is either Aztec or Inca style art and design. Aztec. And it looks accurate, and it looks like definitely you know where it's inspired from and what it's supposed to look like. But I think it's also, if this is a decision that only the film has made and it's not because of the comics, then I think the other side of it, though, is that they're still using us as an aesthetic.
Yeah. You know what I hope's happened when like they first introduced Namor in the movie?
Yeah.
Like, it would be sick if like music started playing, and it went Namor, Namor, Namor.
I thought you were gonna like. You son of a bitch.
I couldn't as soon as I heard that Tenoch Huerta was playing Namor, I was like Namor, Namor, Namor. But
That's really funny.
I keep going back from that song because I know I'm trying to get the song right, but every time it's like a thing where it doesn't translate, so I go Namor, 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 lole, lole, lole. I go anyway.
Another thing that I'm personally excited for, this is all fan speculation, but I think that I see the same evidence that they did, and I, as a fan of Black Panther, I think it's an interesting take, despite specific toxic fans being against it. Is one, I think it's clear that the new Black Panther is going to be female, but two, people were trying to figure out who it was going to be because there's like four possible people it could be, and I forget their names, and I apologize. Because I should know their names, but there's the mom who's the queen, the little sister, the original Black Panther's like love interest and his like best friend slash bodyguard who led the female troops of Wakanda. I think, and I agree with one fan theory that there might be multiple Black Panthers because, from what I understood, the mantle of Black Panther was passed from father to son specifically, and it's like a traditional thing. So I think to break that and kind of embrace this new version of Wakanda, because it looked very much like his character passed. That Black Panther is going to be dead in the new movie, or T'Chaka is going to be dead in the new movie. And so I think to kind of like break up the mantle and say like everyone can be part of this power, they're gonna have multiple Black Panthers.
That's cool.
Yeah.
The thing that I wanted to get to about this whole thing about Tenoch Huerta and Namor was that, like, what does this mean for Latino representation? Because a lot of people are very excited about it because there's a Mexican in a major role in a major Marvel movie, even though, like you mentioned, that Captain Marvel was it Miss Marvel, America Chavez was in it. Anyway, um, they're very clearly making this person like indigenous,
Yes.
like based off of Maya and Mexican culture.
Yes.
Um,
Sorry, we ate a bag earlier and it's in my nose.
You bitch. um,
Okay.
So this is the thing. So Tenoch Huerta is playing a coded, however you want to say, he's playing an indigenous character. It's based off of Maya and as our Mexica culture, right? As aesthetic, whatever you want to call it.
Aztecic.
Bitch. But but that's the thing is like there's a whole controversy because a lot of Latinos are claiming this, specifically Mexicans are claiming this as Mexican representation because Tenoch is Mexican and he and this is his role, right? But there's like a controversy surrounding it because Tenoch, even though he looks like, you know, he has indigenous features, he very clearly has indigenous heritage, he himself does not identify as an indigenous person. And this is the thing for a lot of Latinos is like we don't necessarily identify with our indigenous heritage.
Yeah, like we acknowledge it, but because of the dilution of history and even genealogy, it's hard to say. I think it's not necessarily that we don't want to. I think that there's a part that it doesn't feel genuine enough sometimes to say that we're indigenous people.
I think I don't know. It's the thing is that so when specifically with Mexico, I don't know about other Mesoamerican countries, but specifically with Mexico, you know, there's the sentiment of like the caste system was still in order for a long not the caste system, but this racist like the classifying people, and like generally it was just based off of like your features. So like you could claim to be mestizo and look and but it like technically like the majority of the population is mestizo.
Yeah.
But that would mean that they all have like indigenous indigenous lineage. And the thing with that is like I don't know, in the concept of like of race, it just was like, okay, we're a new race, like this is us, we're the solidifying race. And they still kept out like the indigenous and the black people from that. Like people that were pure indigenous were not part of that system. So that creates like a lot of racism in Mexico and in Latino communities because they're like they make fun of Indians, or excuse me, but they call them Indians, they make fun of indigenous people, and like, you know, it's like a weird thing. And I don't know how I feel about it, because obviously like if they're going to go with like if they're going to go with this indigenous portrayal, then they should go with somebody who claims their indigenous identity. Somebody like Tenoch, he's a fantastic actor,
Yeah.
and I think he's like very proud of who he is, and he's very proud of like being Mexican.
Yeah.
And also he's brown. He has indigenous features. He probably had, I don't know what his experience was, but it's further proof for people that look like that are darker, that are have only been portrayed in negative light, for a chance to be, in this spotlight, right?
Right.
So there's that benefit to it, but then it's also worth recognizing how, like, I feel like, and I've experienced this with like coworkers, friends, family, of like Mexicans like to make fun of indigenous people, and like it's a bad thing to be indigenous or to be black until you can claim until they do something good,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah, I definitely see that, and I also think like there's this weird thing about Latinos where they make that distinction. Because I remember seeing movies. I took a sociology course in college, but they showed me a movie about these immigrants who lived in Mexico in a small village, but they considered their roots more indigenous. But I think for the film's sake, they still spoke Spanish. But they made a distinction of explaining like the people in the village didn't identify as Mexican specifically. They were from the tribe that used to live there. But when they went to the city and they went to Mexico City on their way to America, there was a huge distinction. They were treated differently. They were treated as kind of lesser. Um, and you see that that is prevalent in how Mexicans in Mexico see indigenous people sometimes. Not to say that it's everyone, but it is like perpetual in representation there. And at the same time, there's also this huge drive, and I would say specifically also for Mexican Americans, like Mexicans that immigrated to America as part of keeping to their roots, that they have this like desire to how am I trying to phrase this? They maintain their pride in being from the Aztec people.
right. Like, cause I remember,
Like the
so
best analogy I can think of is like in Big Fat Greek Wedding when they made the joke that the dad and like all of his generation of like Greek people tell everyone that they're descended from Alexander the Great.
right.
It's like the same thing with Mexican people saying that they're all descended from Aztecs.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, I think in like modern indigenous people and have been like looked down on, right? But then that's always been a point of pride of like, this is where we come from, this is who we are.
Yeah,
We come from the Mayans, Aztec warrior, like all that shit, And it is strange to me that there's a pattern of this. That
yeah,
there's like I've seen it happen a lot. Mexicans talk shit about somebody as being not real Mexican or not real Latino. Like, for instance, like this is why I brought this up, was with Lupita Nyong'o.
right.
Um, when she was in 12 Years a Slave. Is that right?
I think so.
Forgive me if I'm wrong, but I remember like one of her earlier major roles, and I want to say it was 12 Years a Slave. But this was a long time ago. This was like 2011, 2012, maybe. Um, but she had a major role in a movie. She was getting a lot of attention, and then it came out that she was born in Mexico. And so I saw so many people posting online. There's articles written. My friend, like not my friends, but like my coworkers were like, "She's not even Mexican. She's not real Mexican. Da da da. She's from Africa and all this stuff.
Right,
She's black. She's not real Mexican." Um, and then she won a fucking Oscar, right?
right.
Then she won an Oscar, and then all of a sudden it's fucking, oh, the Viva Mexico, like this is like like she won one for Mexico and all this stuff, and then they're claiming, oh, this black girl's Mexican all of a sudden, and the thing is, because she had to defend herself,
Yeah, they claim the accolades without claiming the person.
right, because it's like because she even said like she considers herself Mexican because she was born there, she grew up there until I think she was 7, then she moved to another country. But it was like, yeah, exactly like you said. Like they claim the accolades that this is, and then even then, like in that instance, they're claiming, oh, this is a win for Mexico, right? But then it's like that's not even always the case. Like like just a couple years ago, maybe months ago, when like people were talking about, um, about how many black people were getting more recognition and getting shows and getting nominated for things, and like there was like a huge burst for like black people in media representation. And then fucking John Leguizamo was like, now what about for Latinos, like when is that going to happen for Latinos? And then somebody wrote a whole list about like all of the black people that are Afro-Latino,
Yeah.
and like about how they're succeeding, and they're like, how come you're not claiming their success? You're separating your success from them.
Yeah.
And but that's I don't want to be like a fucking enabler or whatever, like an apologist, but it's like that's the complex thing. And that's why I think, like, as much as I am trying to reconnect to being Mexican and want to be proud of like my history, it is um it's a murky
Yeah, I
thing.
mean, it goes back to things we would have said in our previous projects, which is like part of being Mexican is this inherent, um, what's this word? This inherited like crisis of identity because of everything that's been done to the people and the culture of Mexico, Latinos in general, I would say, but from our own experience as Mexican Americans, Mexico as well, of just like not being able to really claim anywhere as their own, even like within where they're from.
Right. Yeah,
Um,
I just think like, I don't know our exact makeup. I've always, as I like exited high school and I got older, I started wanting to reconnect with like my indigenous heritage, and I haven't really dug deep into that journey yet.
yeah,
But I've talked about it before, where I had an identity crisis because I was like hanging out with our family, and I was like, holy shit, like a lot, like my grandma looks white. Like my grandma, oh shit, she's probably more Spanish. Like
yeah, like from a different angle. I saw it differently. Like it was a similar realization, but not the same realization. But I remember like certain family members being talked about differently, not mistreated in any way. I don't want to like spread that, but there was definitely a distinction when we were all together outside in public between how people saw us and how people saw our family members. Like our step grandfather Lalo is darker,
mm-hmm.
and when we were growing up, our older brother Anthony was darker. And like there's like a couple uncles that they're just like darker skinned, and I didn't acknowledge it as a child because I didn't understand it, but then as an adult I was like, yeah, that was a thing that was at the very least like commented on a couple times in our past.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because you and like it's weird because our brothers, like the four of us, were always, and we were always like kind of dark, like not dark but like brown.
Yeah,
And then I guess I didn't, because there was like a mixture. Like we were kind of always in the middle, and then there's like a mixture. Anthony was the darkest, but then everybody else was like above or below us, like in their skin tones and like their
yeah,
their phenotypes. Like a lot of my Theos are lighter skin, and it's like it's not something I fully comprehended until like 1 or 2 years ago, where I was like, oh shit, like it's like I had that thought. I was the last time when we tried recording, I was like, oh fuck, like I'm fucking biracial, dude. Like that's crazy to me. Like
yeah.
even
That was something like even just because like Dominic said, we haven't specifically gotten tested yet. Our brother did. There's some stuff we found out, and there's some stuff that we know about our family history. From what I remember, if I can say that real quick, is I think for like 6 generations on both sides, we're Mexican. On like every generation sprouting out from that tree is Mexican on both sides of the family. And then at one point on I think grandma's side or mom's side, We have roots from Egypt. There's like a great great uncle
I
who was
don't
a
know.
spice trader. That's what we're told. And then on our dad's side, there are no. I could be misrepresenting this. I will double check so that we can confirm for another episode before I continue. But I know that I've been told about roots from Egypt, and on my dad's side for sure, because there's a trait in his family where every other generation gets like hazelish green eyes.
Right.
That we have roots to France,
Yes.
like 6 or 7 generations back. And then I think when Anthony got his test, one thing I did remember is like we have like not 20%, but like a big enough to notice, but a small percentage from Romania.
Something like that.
Yeah.
The biggest, like the whole thing about all of this is the identities for Latino people is very complex.
Yeah.
And so I think that I think that Latinos can be proud of Tenoch Huerta,
Yeah.
and but I would hope that they take it as an opportunity to reflect on what their identity actually is.
Yeah, I would say one thing that I would hope from the Latino community, and you hear this term a lot, and I feel like people misunderstand what it is, but I think it is very applicable in this scenario, is gatekeeping representation. Because the reason I wanted to bring up that Gomez girl from earlier, was it Gomez or Gonzalez?
I don't remember.
The the one from Marvel Multiverse of Madness, is because I saw people defending her representation in like a very stubborn way. They weren't saying anything volatile or anything, but they were like, "No, she's Latino. Just give us this one." Da 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 da. And it's like, well, no, but it wasn't just ours from the beginning. It's like literally never been that way. She was Afro Latina in her conception, and that should have been represented more properly. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and I think it's like it's I understand that want, and I understand that sometimes I can understand the sentiment behind why it can seem frustrating, but um I'm kind of blanking.
Well, I'll say this, that what I'm hoping is that like it would be awesome if we reached a point where like representation doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I know why people take it so seriously, and I know why people defend they defend like any representation that they can get, or two, they like call out when something could be done differently, like
Yeah.
the same thing with uh uh America Ferrera and not America Ferrera
America Chavez.
America Chavez and fucking Namor, is like you could do things more accurately, right?
Yeah.
I understand that. Like I don't know. It's always the hope, and maybe this is idealistic, and I'm not trying to downplay anything. It just is like, because I think the thing should be pushed that like if like I don't know, non-Afro-Latino, like non-Black Latinos should be calling out,
Yeah.
America Chavez not being Afro-Latina.
Yeah, like acknowledging, especially the sentiment I think we're trying to get across is like, as cheesy as it is, not like treat how people how you would want to be treated, but like when it comes to equality, you can't just think of equality for yourself. It's like that's what equality is by definition. Is it's equal all around.
Yeah. And like I said, that's the thing about like Latino identity, is that it is very complex, and there's not one way to be, and it's a multiracial identity. So
Yeah, and
it's another thing of why I don't like this whole like real Mexican shit, because it's like, imagine making fun of, somebody that's Navajo for not speaking English, right? Like imagine making fun
yeah,
of
like
like
I've honestly seen TikToks, not about language specifically, but I saw this one where this woman kept telling this indigenous person to go back to where they came from, and they were like, I am.
Yeah.
I'm from here.
But what I'm trying to say is like this whole thing of like mestizos and
Yeah.
like people that are separating themselves from indigenous indigeneity. Like I'm not gonna tell anyone how to be, but it's just like I said, imagine making fun of a Navajo for not speaking English, the way that we make fun of Mexicans for not speaking Spanish, because
Right.
it's like what you're clinging on to this, like you're clinging on to this identity of that was forced upon your people, and I think there's something to be said about the resilience of people and about how we take things and change. But I think you also need to be aware of just how fucked up like this thing was. I don't think like, don't like I don't think it's wrong to eat a fucking burrito even though like flour tortillas are Spanish. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's like that stuff is fine, but just like be self-aware and like understand what took place for this to happen.
Yeah, and I feel like this popped in my head, and I know we've talked about it before. I feel like someone's gonna bring up the taco thing now,
What?
because about how like I shit on tacos in the old podcast, or like white people tacos.
Right.
First of all, I never called them white people tacos. The internet did. After based on what I said, but specifically, I was always talking about like cheaper recipes for tacos, and I want to be specific. There's a distinction between like not being able to afford ingredients and specifically picking bad ingredients. That's what I've always maintained. So that's not what we're talking about when we say like, well, you could like this without having to be this. That's separate. Those tacos are gross.
Give me 1 second. No, it's still recording. It's just I can't tell how long we've been going because it's not keeping time that way. It's keeping time in measures.
Oh yeah. Well,
Um,
I mean, we talked a lot for a bit. It feels like that was at least 30, 40 minutes.
yeah, I think we could.
So now we can get into.
Well, let me do a clean cut first, so that way I.
Just-
Okay. So to put a button on that,
So now, to round out the episode, we are going to pick. What was it? What did we
I
say?
don't know how many we'll do.
We're going to answer some Discord questions. Bow, 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 bow. I don't know. Let's just go with the oldest ones. First one is from Ziltino,
Hell yeah.
who asks, "What state or states in Mexico is your family from?"
Okay, this was trying to dox us or what? Like a little bit personal. I don't know. My grandpa is from Colima. My grandma on my mom's side, I believe, is from Michoacan, and then my grandparents on my dad's side are from Juarez.
Yes.
So that's what we know. I've been to Juarez twice when I was a little kid. I saw a dead dog in front of a church. I don't know what that means. I don't know if anybody was trying to send a message, but that's a core memory of mine.
That feels like classic like imagery, but like stereotypical like AMC imagery of like Mexico.
Yeah, and then I went into the church, and I didn't speak Spanish, but the sermon was like, oh, people, everybody started laughing at one point. Like he said a joke. Why the fuck are pastors like fucking smart, like charming? Like they're gonna do fucking type 5 before their sermon. But he like told a joke, and everybody started laughing. I was like, what? My grandma started laughing, and then I was like, what did he say? And then he was like, she said that he just said that nobody goes to church anymore, that everybody's watching football.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's hilarious. I don't know. That's the only memories I have of
It'd be
Juarez.
funny if he was like roasting you and you couldn't tell. Fucking Nintendo's here.
Fucking Nintendo. I haven't been to any other parts of Mexico except for TJ.
I've been close to TJ, but never crossed the border, and I think those only were the times where like we picked up fireworks as kids.
Why do you gotta make everything racist, dude?
That's what happened.
Mexican fireworks, huh? Stereotype much
Where do you get your fireworks?
from the TNT thing. I support the local high schools, and I buy them from a fireworks stand Like,
Nice.
I don't fucking care about fireworks.
I do. They're awesome. I like the chemistry of fireworks. It'd be cool to build my own, but it's dangerous, and I don't recommend it without like several degrees, and permits.
Stupid. Fireworks are dumb.
But yeah, I've never actually been. I think there was an opportunity to go when our grandfather died, or Grandpa Nacho, but I think I was young, and I, from what I remember, me and my little brother took it a little bit harder than some of our cousins, and we were the youngest ones. So I think they just like let us sit that out, and we stayed home with like a babysitter. I forgot.
They just dropped them off at Danny's. They're like, we'll be back.
And the rest of my brothers and my parents went for like 2 days.
Only went for a day.
Well, yeah, but it's like a trip there and back. You
Yeah,
came back the next day. But I got a really cool toy because he was
from Danny's.
No, they brought me back a toy, and it was honestly like.
Honestly, it was from Danny's.
No, it was not. You're gonna make it sound so weird when I describe the toy. It was a wrestling ring made out of a shoebox, and like toys, wax figurines that like plastic figurines, but they were handmade plastic figurines, and I thought that was dope.
Yeah, man,
And
they
then
fucking sell those everywhere. This guy walked into
And
Danny's.
it was cool. This is the first time I ever got one of those.
One thing that I remember from going to TJ was I was like 13, 14 years old, and I don't know what where we what we were trying to do, where we were trying to go. We're trying to go to like a restaurant or something. So you have to go like they don't take American dollars. Some places don't take American dollars, so
Right.
you have to go convert them. So we would like walk in a group, and there's a bunch of like sex workers walking a particular street, not everywhere in the city.
I'm just imagining that you went to one of them to exchange currency because you couldn't find a place to go.
No,
As like a 13.
that's not what happened.
Like a little kid, like, excuse me, do you have change for a fight? Anyway, what happened?
I'm trying to think of like what she would respond. No, I can't think of anything. No. Well, the thing is like there's a lot of sex workers on the street that we were on, and I think part of it is that they hang out near the currency exchange because that's where people have a lot of money.
Right.
So, because you would have to make change. So actually, they would take American dollars, but like if you went to go, a lot of places didn't have like American dollars change because like the whole thing about going to TJ is like my parents were like, you have to carry small bills because they're gonna try to overcharge you for everything. So you have to like have only small bills. Anyway, long story short, I just remember being 13, and I don't know if they was like cool because I was 13, like, or if they just thought I was older, but it's like a joke. People that have been to TJ know that like they try to solicit Johns, but they go like, like that's how they get your attention. And so it's like walking down the street, and it's like fucking Friday the 13th, where they're just like, that was it. I wanted the punchline to be better, but you had to fucking go on your thing and undermine my story.
That's so funny.
Get the fucking contract out. We're changing some things.
Ryan has to wait. Okay, when's the next one down? Okay, Romo824 from the Discord asks, sort of a heavy question, but it's on my mind. How do you both fight back any anxiety or confidence issues? I've dealt with really bad case of imposter syndrome for quite a while, and I really respect creators like yourselves and the vulnerability it takes to put out content. Much love. Congrats on the new endeavor.
Well, thank you for the congrats, Romo.
Yes.
Thanks for being part of the Discord.
I'm wondering, because they mentioned two different things.
Oh, yeah. I was... I'm just doing, like, interpretation for Ryan. two things.
Oh, I thought you were saying peace out.
No.
Because they mentioned anxiety, and so I didn't know if that was in reference to like being public, like internet personalities as well as comedians. But they also mentioned imposter syndrome.
So I think there's. Sorry to cut you off so quickly. I think there's two types of imposter syndrome. I think they're.
Get out of the contract. Sorry.
There's two, and I think they're talking about more of just like being confident in what you put out, from the creative side.
Yeah, that's what I figured.
Briefly, the other one, because it came up in one of the lives we were doing. So like imposter syndrome in terms of being Mexican and in terms of like being Latino enough, right?
Yeah.
In that sense, I mean, I feel like both kind of like go hand in hand, right? Specifically in terms of like being Mexican enough or being Latino enough. I've said it before, there's not one way to be, right? So like as long as you feel it, like you have rights to claim it. However, it's not just as simple as that. I want to make that very clear. It's like you have to do the work to understand like where you come from. It's just so you're not stepping on toes and stuff like that. But also it's like I'm trying to like speed it up. It's just a thing of like the more I look into things, the more I feel better about who I am as a Mexican, as a Latino, because I see that it is complex and it is hard and it is like people were stripped of their identities. And so there's a lot of work that goes into reclaiming your identity and a lot of work that goes into figuring out who it actually is that you are. So as long as you're not putting down anyone for being Latino or like for not being Latino enough or whatever. My biggest beef is people that shit on people for not speaking Spanish. Yeah. Like I say that as somebody who doesn't speak Spanish, but it's also just like it's a silly thing to be embarrassed about because you could always learn a language, but also it just like I said, imagine being proud of having your neck stepped on, like
yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I definitely understand. And I would say that's not I don't like
Also, that was very aggressive what I just said. I'm not trying to like be condescending to people, but I just like I said before, imagine making fun of like an Inuit person for not speaking English.
Yeah.
Like we are indigenous people and we have claims to that. And so like just it's like to me it edges closer towards Latinos for Trump. Like that's the same mentality of like this fool doesn't speak Spanish.
Yeah, it's like sometimes friends and family will tease us in how we pronounce things. Like and they'll be like, "Sorry, can you say that again?" And I'll say it again, and they're like, "You say it so weird." I'm like, "Yeah, it's almost like I don't speak Spanish, you asshole."
It's almost like this language was forced on us.
It's almost like it's not my first language, so I have to actually learn it. Yeah. But it's also like I outside of people teasing me, I don't, not that I don't acknowledge it, but I don't let it hold me back from interacting with people. Like 2 weeks ago, I went to this thing with my dad and my stepmom and my birth mom. That felt weird to say. My stepmom and my actual mom. No,
my mom.
But my stepmom and my mom and my dad and my stepsister, we went to
my family.
Yes, went to Tacolandia.
Yep.
Which is Taco Land. It was like it's like a. Shut up.
Continue.
It was essentially just like a swap meet, but it's almost entirely food vendors. But I went out on my own and I ordered my own food the whole time. And I would say that I maintain that I don't speak Spanish, and that while I am trying to learn, sometimes I'll say that I don't speak it fluently, but it's because I can't like respond in Spanish, but I understood enough, and I sometimes understand enough to reciprocate in English what the person is telling me. And it felt honestly like really validating to have several different people talk to me in Spanish and be like about their menu and me be able to respond in English, and neither of us, there was no breakdown in communication. We both knew what the other person was saying. It's just that they spoke more Spanish as their first language and I spoke English.
Yeah.
Like I ordered arepas con blanco, and it was just literally just white cheese. You know,
Arepa?
arepa. Yes, I swear I said it right the first, like when I was
When
there.
you were telling me about it. But you have this thing where you switch your vowels around
Yeah,
when you
it's
speak
a
in
thing in my
Spanish.
head. It's like a mental like I don't have dyslexia, but I switch. I had a brain fart. 2 seconds. I switch letters. I switch my vowels around for some reason.
Yeah. Um
I do know. I forget the name of it that I do have, and I forgot what it was called. But this is what they told me in first grade, and that's what I remember. There is something in my brain that switches stuff around. It's not dyslexia, but it is a similar like
it's a gremlin.
just like bzz, bzz, bzz. Jury duty, blackmail.
Can you tell that story? So this is right when this is
was
right
like the
when
day after.
this is the day of. Oh no, it was the day after.
No, that's right. You spent the night. It was the day after, the big split between us and our former podcast, Easter Mo. And we were all talking about what we were planning that day. And I was listening to everyone. My little brother had to go to court. He had to go to report to jury duty. And I think my dad had gotten a summons, but he got like, we were all describing our day, and I was listening to everything, and this is like right after.
But the thing is like, there was our breakup with the thing, and then my mom. I'm both of the moms involved in this situation. I don't like include them in any of this, right? Like in the drama, because they're moms, so both of the moms reacted accordingly.
Yeah,
right?
they reacted like moms who had children going through something, which
Yeah. So our mom kept like, coming to us and being like, I'm gonna say this, and we were like, Mom, just chill. But she kept coming back. So she's like going on the thing, I'm gonna say this, I'm gonna say that, I'm gonna say this, and then my dad was like, oh, I just got summoned to this thing, and then Diego comes in and he's like, I'm on my way to jury duty.
And so I was like, it'd be funny. I had the thought that fuck, what did I say?
The Grinch.
Yeah, it was the Grinch. I was like, this sounds like the scene from the Grinch, just jury duty, blackmail. And
we were laughing so hard. Also, I want to say this was super funny. Was after the breakup happened, right?
No, sorry. I have to say this because it's in my head, and I'll keep laughing until I say it out loud. There was another joke made that day that's unrelated to any of this, but I think one of us had called Hermes, which is your dog, but we're house sitting. Dogs called him like Chubby or something, and he was like, "Leave my dog alone. He's the nicest dog in the world." And it was like, he a while back he got excited and barked at a child. That's it. Wasn't aggressive towards the child. He barked because he thought they were playing. That's all that happened. But it was like, he scares babies. Dominic, without skipping a beat, was like, well, that baby probably deserved it. And then I was like, yeah, imagine it's just like a Hitler baby going, like you flashback to the baby. It's just a Hitler stash and a flag, like, oh my God.
Anyway, so something funny happened the day of the breakup, right?
Right.
I didn't like or respond to any of the comments, after I posted the announcement on TikTok, but I read all of them as they were coming in. And one of them, I was crying, like, throughout all of this, right? We got back to the house. And I'm sitting there, and everybody's like, we're talking, trying to cheer me up, and I'm like, I start crying, and I'm like, fuck, I just like couldn't hold it in anymore. And like I pull up my phone, and I'm going through I'm like scanning through the comments, and like some people, like everybody's leaving their opinion. Some people are being supportive, and some people are, like calling me out or whatever. And it is what it is. I get to one comment, and it says, I'm glad you mustered up the strength to leave a toxic situation. And I was like, you fucking asshole. And we all, like, I started laughing so hard. That was probably one of the best things to come out of this. Oh, man. That it just like got me. It was just like the perfect thing to say. So that's the only comment that I wish like I would have liked or said something about.
It was like weird, like stuff kept coming up that day that made us laugh to the point that we cried a little bit because it was also depressing at the same time. One thing, I don't know if I should tell the coffee thing. Do you think it's?
I don't remember the coffee thing.
I'll say it because
we can cut it if we need to.
Yeah. Because I've maintained, especially if you look in our Discord, like we've made announcements. We tell our fans when they ask us, we don't want any animosity towards the old podcast. We're not trying to perpetuate any hate. We don't want people speaking on our behalf. We're not, we can't stop anyone from doing so, but we want to make sure that it's clear it's not coming from us. We're not asking for it. If you want to support us, you're more than welcome to support us here and all the things that we're doing here. I want to say that clear because what happened the day of, and this was before he like blocked me on everything, I still saw his Instagram and I saw like an hour and a half after everything happened that he went to Starbucks and they got his name correct. And if you followed the podcast long enough, you know that they never fucking get Gerardo's name right. So for it to be like the worst day of our fucking lives was like the funniest fucking thing. And he posted about it. He's like, well, I'll be damned. I'm like, yeah, man, that's really sad. Oh.
Yeah.
We're gonna miss that. We're gonna miss everything, but it's what it is. What it is.
Yeah.
We're doing this now.
Should we let's just answer some questions.
Yes.
We'll go. Let's just go through them.
And then we answered like 2 questions.
Yeah. We've been going for a while, but
yeah, because there's only like 3 or 4.
Let's just go through them.
So Ozzy says, "Hey, here's a question. Here's a question for." Sorry.
Shout out Ozzy.
It's not that aggressive. Here's a question I would like to ask both of you. What advice would you give to your former 16-year-old self about enjoying life and being positive?
Okay, so I want to tie this into Romo's question because we didn't really answer Romo's question. It was about it was yeah, it was about imposter syndrome and specific. Okay, I'm gonna start there and then go into it. Like in terms of like being a creator and being confident and I want to put this out there that like I still have anxiety.
Yeah.
Like I still have depression and anxiety.
The cord got caught in his foot.
And I still have all of those things. And every time I hit the stage, right? Hit the stage. You look at me, I'm a fucking comedian. Every time I hit the stage, dude. But whenever I perform a show, it doesn't matter if I'm hosting, if I'm doing a mic, or if I'm doing like an actual performance where I'm booked or something. And sometimes even when I'm recording the podcast. And also, even like when we did the anniversary show, like meeting people, I was like super shy, and I was trying my best to be like wanting to meet people and be a good host.
Sorry, you finish.
But, I'm fucking nervous to meet people.
One thing was, I am awkward when I meet people, but it's not because I'm nervous. It's just because I don't know how to interact socially. But one thing I noticed was people are nervous to come up to me. So there was like a good 30 minutes where people were staring at me, and I would say hi, but no one would come up to me. So I just felt like super creepy.
I just imagine Ryan just being in the corner, like eating. You're off. That was gonna sound mean, but sometimes you just be like eating like a pastry, and you're by yourself in the corner, and just be like,
"That's what was happening."
Like all, just like.
I will say this is a story I told on a live once, and I'll retell it now. But when I drink, I don't drink aggressively. I would say, well,
you do.
I don't drink excessively.
Drink this right now. Imagine.
But there's this thing when I was a kid. I used to practice this magic trick where I would hold a quarter in my throat, and magicians do this. So I'm not weird for knowing this. All right, it's a thing people do. but I taught myself to do it, and essentially you bring up the quarter later, and it was like it appeared out of nowhere.
Yeah, that's really cool.
It was until one time I accidentally swallowed the quarter, and I was like, "Can I go to the nurse?" She's like, "Why? I swallowed a quarter. Why did you swallow a quarter?" I mean, I wasn't trying to. And then they sent us to the nurse, and was like, "Well, do you feel sick?" I'm like,
My meter was almost up.
Look at attention meter. I have to eat quarters. That was its own funny story because I literally just sat there and they're like, "Well, unless you throw it up, you can lay down for a bit if you want." I was like, "Yes, please."
Did the nurse be like, okay, say and then you open your mouth and it was like, doo-doo-doo. Like, Holly, you're trying to reach right now.
I thought it was going to be like a ka-ching noise, like.
Oh, that would have been funnier. I was thinking of payphones.
Yeah, I think cash register. Anyway, fuck, what story was it? Oh, so I have like control over my gag reflex for the most part.
Gag right now.
I can't because I can control it. Oh yeah, I don't know.
Keep going.
So when I drink, I have a habit of drinking quickly, unintentionally. I like chug because I can, and so I just don't think to stop myself from doing so. So one thing that I can understand can be intimidating if you're walking up to me when this happens, and it happened once at the reunion show, is someone was about to come say hi to me, and I go, 1 second, and then I drink an entire pint of beer, and then I put it down. I'm like, ugh. I drink like a fucking Viking, and it looks really like intimidating, and it scares people sometimes.
I don't understand why you do that.
It's not on purpose.
He'll open a bottle and just like drink half of the bottle out of the gate.
I get thirsty.
Like, stay hydrated, dude.
I do. We pull up like a.
It's fucking gross.
But it's like one of the ones you put into like a dispenser, like the biggest ones. Anyway, there's a second story that the one I told on live of. We were at the resident for a different thing. I was hanging out with you while you worked.
Right.
And I went to go buy a beer, and I went to, so they have a bar inside and they have an outside bar, and it's in like a trailer thing. So from where I'm standing, like the bar is right here. So I have to look up, and it makes me feel really small. So for some reason, when I handed her the money, I did it with both hands like this. Like, I was like, 1 beer, please. And
please, sir. I want some beer.
And then she takes it and hands me the pint, and then she turns around to get my change, and I immediately drink it and put it back down, and she turns around and doesn't realize that I drank it and gives me my change, and then I leave, and she thought someone else like dropped off a glass. The reason that's funny is because I put the change in my pocket, go talk to Dominic, I'm like, I want another beer. So I immediately walk back. I was like, can I have another one? And I give her the second half of my change, and she's like, oh, that was fast. I'm like, you don't even know. And then so this time she takes the money and puts a pint in front of me. And because it was like exact change, she doesn't give me change this time. So she watches me drinking. She was like, Jesus. And I thought that was really funny.
Yeah, it's really funny to watch, Ryan. The point is, with imposter syndrome, you fucking. Honestly, like, let's just say, in terms of performance, or when I do things, it's like I still have all of those anxieties. They don't ever really leave you. You just learn how to handle them.
Yeah.
And so, especially through doing Isimo and doing this podcast, well, it's the first episode, but through doing a podcast and putting myself out there publicly, you learn that people connect with you and for who you are. And in like, even in performing, like when I do stand up, it's like I'm most anxious. I've heard a lot of comedians say this before, and I connect with it. Is I'm most nervous the second before my foot hits the stage.
Yeah, I want to speak to that. I think a lot of it has to be like, it's always so much different planning something and actually doing it. And so I think that's why a lot of comedians can relate to that sentiment of like, when you actually have to you can be like, all right, you can be the most confident driving to the event, preparing your set, and then once they tell you that you're on stage, you're running it through your head, you have it down, and then they go, Dominic Angel, and then you're like, fuck, and then like immediately you don't know if you remember everything.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah, and then you go on stage and
I would say, like, if you've ever seen, sorry, I keep cutting you up, my show, well, I'll wait, I'll let you finish because I want to say something else.
well, it's just like there's two things I want to say in terms of like actually performing and then well, Jesus Christ, in terms of in terms of performance and like imposter syndrome. The first thing is like in terms of performing is just like when you got to learn to let go. You got to learn to let go of anything because whatever's going to happen is going to happen regardless of like if you're nervous or not. And the best thing to do is just to try to stay present. And that's a big thing for performance art. There's probably some way to relate it to like putting yourself out there for your art and stuff like that. And even photography. I'm a very anxious, self-conscious person, and I'm a photographer. And you have to learn how to be a fan of yourself and to hype yourself up because it's like not everything needs to be the best thing in the fucking world, the best photo you've ever seen. Not like you can do things just to make you happy, and that's fine. But you have to be able to recognize like this is why I do this.
Yeah.
Like whatever the reason is, like recognize that's the reason why you do it, and that it makes you happy, and that you like the quality of it. You know, if you don't like the quality of it, you can always improve. But there's like, I don't know, it's like a thing where like, especially as somebody who's like, I'm trying to make a business out of my photography, it's like I have to have the confidence in myself to be a good photographer and to be worth the money that I charge, and like, and to have the confidence to reach out to people and be like, yo, I'm good. I'm a good photographer. Like, if you ever need somebody, like, hit me up, like, hire me. And it takes a while to get there. Part of it, I used to do affirmations, and I was doing affirmations like in the beginning of Isimo. In the first few months of Isimo, I was doing affirmations, and I encourage everybody to do it. What?
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I don't want to say it because it'll disrupt the thing. I'll say it after.
Okay. Affirmations are very useful. And if you don't use them or if you don't know what they are, it's literally like there's a lot of jokes about it, about like people that like I'm a successful businessman, like stuff like that, like those self-help tapes. Excuse me. All of those jokes about self-help tapes, I feel like, are just like this whole it just perpetuates mental health stigma. The thing about affirmations is like it's based off of your needs. So like there's not one thing to say. That's why it's like it's good to use certain affirmations to get started, like listening to a tape or a video on YouTube or something, but then like curating your affirmations for yourself. I forgot the name of the guy who like I listened to this from, and my mom was actually the one that told me about affirmations and was like, you have to do it, like it's going to train your brain. And I wasn't really like, she just wasn't saying it the right way. But then when I heard it from this guy who I forget his name, but he said it like affirmations are good because it's the same way that you can't take a cold bath and a hot bath at the same time. It's one or the other. You can't have a good thought and a positive thought at the same time, or a good thought and a negative thought at the same time. So when you have that anxiety, when you have those scary thoughts of like people aren't going to like me, my art's not good enough, people aren't interested in me, you say the opposite of all of those things. You say, one of my affirmations when I first started the podcast was people want to hear what I have to say. And that's something that I still struggle with, even though like there's been a tremendous amount of support behind us. I just want to be clear about that. Like it is something that it's an ongoing thing, but it is something that you can like train yourself to like confirm. Like people are interested in what I have to say.
Yeah.
I am, uh um I am I can't think of it. I'm a good photographer. I um I have people in my life that love me. I have friends that love me. I have family that loves me. Even stuff like that, like anything, whatever it is, you know, I have the potential to be great. I can achieve anything I set my mind to. These little things, those definitely help with imposter syndrome. This all goes into this. I want to go into like what Ozzy's question was about, like advice for our 16-year-old selves.
Right.
Um, do you have anything to say about that?
Well, first, I'm politicized. The first thing I wanted to get, the reason I laughed when you said affirmations is this isn't his fault. Whenever I hear the word affirmations, the first thing I think of is Nacho Libre, and the fact that the Ramsey character had someone whose sole job was to stand there right before a fight and say affirmations to him, and he'd be like, "Ramses is number one. His legs are number one. His lips are number one. His muscles." And that was the whole thing.
I think if you say your affirmations in that voice, it'll be much more effective.
You are the greatest. Okay.
People care
Well, I would
about.
say it's different for me because this is a natural side effect and it's not a benefit or a hindrance. It was just a thing that happened. It is not a superpower. And in fact, sometimes it like got in the way of shit. And that's why it's like, it's not either or. It's just a thing I have to deal with, which is that as an autistic person, I was very oblivious to, I would, when I'm good at something and I know I'm good at something, I'm not prideful, but I am also not like trying to play down that I'm good at that. When I want people,
We had a technical difficulty, but go ahead with what you're saying, right?
so I want to say, as an autistic person, I don't think that I was a cocky person, but I also had no nuance in how I spoke about myself. When I was good at something, I acknowledged it. And that's something that now that I'm aware of it, I still do, because the thing is, like, when someone's like, "Wow, you're actually really good at comedy," I'm like, "Yeah, I know." That's like why I spend so much time on it, so I can be good at it, because that's what I want to be, as good at the things that I like.
Yeah, it's a thing that's sometimes frustrating with Ryan because it's like even if you want, it's like I don't ever try to do like, oh, actually, but I'll be like, damn, you fucking crushed it tonight. You had a great set. And he's like, yeah. I'm like, okay, asshole. I'm trying to fucking give you a compliment.
And I'm accepting it.
All he,
But I also wanted to say that as far as the physical aspect of it, I do get very anxious. One thing I was trying to say earlier is if you've seen me on stage, and a lot of people might notice if they've been to more than one of my shows that as soon as I'm done, I leave the room. And it's because it's not emotional anxiety, but it is physical for me. I still have to use a lot of energy to keep up my persona on stage. And as someone who's neurodivergent, someone who gets overstimulated, it's a lot of physical work for me. So I get adrenaline and anxiety after the fact. And I essentially, anytime, and I like, we look at my old videos sometimes, literally all of the best ones I've ever done, I was like mid panic attack by the time I finished the set.
yeah. Yeah, I remember you telling me about that. One thing I also want to say, just to kind of wrap up this section, is like, the fact that you are making art means that there's an audience for it.
Yeah.
Like, that's a lot of the ways I get over imposter syndrome is just like you connect to someone else's art, right? You connect to someone else's music or to their comedy or to a podcast because they're saying the things that resonate with you and that bring truth to what you feel. So the same way that they put something out and you connected with that, the fact that you are putting things out means that there's an audience for it. So I kind of take that with, I take that with me in like in knowing it gives me peace, I guess.
Yeah, and I would say like the final button I'll put on it is there's a difference between being boastful and being fuck, what was it in my head? There's a
Keeping it
difference
real.
between being boastful and acknowledging your worth. There was this TikTok that someone showed me. This professor takes out a $20 bill. He's like, "Who would like this $20 bill?" And everyone raises their hand. Then he crumples it up. "How about now?" And everyone raises their hand. He puts it on the floor and he stomps on it and then picks it up again. "How about now?" He's like, "Do you see how people think about objects differently than they think about their own self-worth? No matter how damaged it was, no matter how wrinkly its appearance became, its value never changed for you, and that's how you got to see yourself."
And that man was Albert Einstein.
No, but it was a white man. Albert Einstein was a misogynist.
There's a video of it's an old TED Talk joke. I won't get into it, but there's this guy that dressed up like a samurai and gave a TED Talk and was just trolling.
That's funny.
Anyway, yeah. In terms
So know
of
your worth.
know your worth. Hopefully that was helpful. We'll answer Ozzy's question and then we'll get out of here.
Yeah. What was I? Oh yeah. So to bring it round back to move the button so that it answers Ozzy's question, I wouldn't. This is what I wanted to say. So actually, pause. I want you to go first because I have something specific I want to say about my.
In terms of advice, this is for me specifically, is you don't need everybody to love you. And you, damn, for what I would want to tell my 16-year-old self is your ideas are good, but you need to commit to them and commit to yourself and worry more about staying true to yourself than to getting other people to like you.
Right.
That's it.
The one thing that I wanted to say in relation to everything I said prior is honestly, there is not really any advice I'd give to myself because a lot of the ideas and mentality.
I fucking crushed it. I did everything right.
No, but here's why. Is because a lot of how I think now, these stem from realizations I made specifically after I turned 16.
Okay, well then 14, Ryan.
Let me finish. Where's the contract? Ryan can't interrupt jokes. Dominic can't interrupt Ryan being deep as fuck. That was meant to be funny.
This is so deep, I'm going to need some floaties, fool. Keep it going.
The reason is because a lot of...
I can't swim.
The reason is because a lot of the mentality that I retain now stemmed from conclusions I came to during those years of my adolescence, specifically like after I turned 16, is deciding that I don't care if I seem cocky when I say these things because I'm not cocky. I'm not boasting. You ask me if I'm good at something, I'll tell you that I'm good at it or I'll tell you that I'm not. And it was a huge realization for me as someone who's about to become an adult, as someone who in recent years at that point, discovered certain things about themselves and their diagnoses and everything. It was a huge transition for me that I think it is for all teenagers, but it was that point in my life where I decided I'm only doing things that I deem necessary in my own life for myself. And I know, like, I'm striving to know my own worth. So, no, as cocky as it sounds, there isn't any specific advice I'd give myself because the person I was then led to the person that I am now.
I think that could be interpreted as be believing yourself, like know your worth.
Know your worth, essentially,
exactly.
Yeah.
Touching back. Also, one thing I want to say to myself and to young people that might be listening to this is don't be a fucking creep to women.
Yeah. That's something.
You're not Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
And I want to say, like, because there's definitely no way that we are. How am I going to say this? We weren't born with this mentality. Like, people, a certain like.
I used to say the N-word all the time.
Okay, I don't know if you want to project that right now.
Well,
But
no,
what I'm
I
saying
mean,
is, the mentality we have now is not something we were born with. It's something we had to learn. I was weird in high school, and especially at a time when I didn't understand how to be, not just because I'm autistic, but because I was a teenager. I had a mentality that like was not okay, and I've never hurt anyone specifically or done anything physically aggressive towards anyone, especially women. But when I was a teenager, I had a mentality that I didn't understand the female perspective, and because of that, I had a lot of selfish like viewpoints when it came to relationships and things like that that I had to grow out of and like teach myself about and learn about and acknowledge. And the biggest thing when you reach that conclusion is to embrace it instead of like fight it because you don't want to believe that you might have done wrong. Like I did wrong and I learned from it and I've never done it ever again.
Yeah. Well, I wish I wouldn't have said the N-word thing.
I told you.
During that part. But it is the truth. Like, I did used to say that.
Yeah.
And I recognize that. I mean, the same thing. The reason why I brought up saying the N-word is because it was a thing that I thought I justified it when I was younger. I also justified like the way that I treated my friends that were women when I was younger, and the way that I treated women in relationships, and the way that I saw them, that I thought I was actually a good guy. I had like nice guy syndrome. I fucking like I said, I thought I was Joseph Gordon-Levitt. Like I thought that was the way to be. And part of it is that, we were taught these things, that it was cultivated, and also like you're consuming media that you don't know how to interpret yet because you don't have the life experience.
Right.
Like I was like fucking Max Fisher when I was I like looked up to Max Fisher, but I didn't get the point that he was like a snot-nosed kid that like I was I wish I would have learned the lesson that he learned at the end.
Right.
Of that movie when I fucking saw the movie, but I didn't take that in. I was just like, oh yeah, I fucking am super smart and I'm super creative and anybody would be lucky to have me and this and that. And like I was obsessed. Anyway, excuse me, I'm burping a lot this episode, but I think that's a big thing. I don't know. I didn't know necessarily if we needed to go this deep in this, but I do think, if you're a guy, especially if you're identify as a man, and you're younger, or you have younger men in your life that are reaching the dating age, especially if you're a man and you have young men in your life.
Because he said that like 3 times.
No. I said it because I wanted to make the differentiation between like I said or you have young men in your life.
In my head, I'm thinking if you're a man's man, a lady's man, or even just a man about to.
I know I said it very confusing, but you know what I mean. If you're a young man or you're a man that's older and you have nephews or you have kids or you have cousins or younger siblings or whatever, younger people that you work with, like it's important for you to recognize that. And it just like clicked with me when, the whole advice for when you're 16 is like, I used to be, I regret a lot of who I was when I was younger. And it, like Ryan said, it was a process of getting to this point. Even the stuff about anxiety and the stuff about depression and the stuff about confidence and like even like all the stuff that we're talking about right now, it's like I wasn't born this way. This stuff was like
Lady Gaga.
It took us a while to get here, and I'm still learning. And I think that's the biggest thing that I would tell people too, is to just be open to constantly learning, because our perspectives on things keep changing as time goes on, and we learn how to be better towards each other. And I think that's the number one thing.
Yeah.
Of like, you should always strive to be better towards.
To add to that, I want to say, especially if you're whatever group you identify with, whether it's racial or gender wise or ethnicity wise. And if you receive some kind of privilege or like perception bubble, acknowledging that exists is not the same as is not the same as confirming that you're a bad person. You are not a bad person for acknowledging these things exist. If anything, you are striving to be a better person by knowing that they exist and doing what you can to perpetuate a healthier environment for these concepts to evolve.
Yeah. Agreed. Sorry, I was
that snap right there. That's Dominic evolving. Wings of
okay.
Purity. I don't know. I couldn't think of something.
We are done with this, Ryan.
Goodbye.
We don't have a sign off yet.
We're gonna work on it. We're still, we're in the baby stages. We're gonna have catchphrases. Whammy, wham, wham, wazzle.
Yeah.
You just let it sit there.
Sorry. I don't know if I need to apologize. It was a long episode. I think we stuffed a lot of content into this. We're going to from this point forward do our best to record every week and put out an episode every week. We're waiting on a theme song. So after this, I'm hoping that, we're only going to have to do this like one or two more times and then we'll have a theme song.
Yeah. But theme song or not, we're doing it.
Yeah, we're going to do it. The next episode, this is Patreon. The next episode might be another Patreon only. I'm hoping by the third time we do it, it'll be the official episode 1. We'll have everything we need together, all of our equipment, our lights and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's just like as we're building. Once we have specifically the theme song, we'll post publicly.
Yeah. So a couple, I guess if you made it this far, the two things that we want to press are, one, we do have a Patreon challenge that if we reach 100 patrons at any level by August 5th.
As long as it's 100 total, you guys get to decide our next hair colors.
Yeah. You guys can vote on what color we should dye our hair, and we'll do it. Did you say August 5th?
I would say I have one request, but if you vote for it, you vote for it. Pick something that's not red.
I can do red. Ryan doesn't. He's done with it.
It's like it's been like 12 months at this point. I want something new.
Yeah. I want to hire somebody to do like paint, like dude, fucking rainbow colors and shit.
It'd be tight to talk to. We have a friend who has a brother,
Danny Moon,
works for famous people.
Yeah.
Well, he works for himself, but he works with famous people.
Renowned hair colorist Danny Moon.
He's friends with Cartoon Network's Velma. Well, the live action Velma. I forget her name.
Okay.
Something.
Very cool guy. But yeah, there's that. So maybe we'll do August 12th.
Yeah.
We'll do August 12th.
We'll decide in August. And we might do it in the next episode. If not the next one, the one after. But we are going to finalize the mascot competition.
Oh, that's right. That was the other thing I was going to say. Was join the Discord if you haven't already.
We're going to do a poll soon.
We're going to do a poll soon of what the name of our mascot is going to be. Is there anything else?
Specifically, I did want to address, because I run the Discord, so I've been updating roles. If any of you listening now are part of the $15 tier and you have not yet joined the Discord and would like to, you can DM me on Instagram at Ryan_D_Reyes or DM us at Un Poquito on Instagram, and I'll send you the link. And that way, what did I say?
Un Poquito Pod.
Un Poquito Pod on Instagram. We'll try to put a link in this episode, but DM me at any of those, and I will send you the link directly so that I can give you the role that you need to enter our chat so that we can answer your questions on the episodes.
Cool.
I think that's all of the housekeeping for today.
Yeah.
Thank you again for all the patrons, especially the people that bought from the wish list and helped us get our equipment ready. Literally, we couldn't do this today if that hadn't been for you guys. So thank you for your support. We're excited for new episodes. We don't have a catchphrase yet.
We'll do it one last time for the OGs. No?
No.
It's my story.
You can do it. I was going to say, jury duty, jury.
Are you going to do it with me?
It feels weird.
Just one last time, dude.
This is the last time ever.
What's
I
the
swear, if
last
people
time?
requested in comments, we won't delete them, but we're gonna say no.
Don't
Fly. Actually, it does make sense because our mascot's a rooster. Fuck.